For some background information, this Historical Lives project is from the perspective of a character named Sage Brown. She's a sophomore student studying at University of California, Berkeley. During this time period, events such as the free speech movement, the civil rights movement, and the Vietnam War were occurring. At UC Berkeley, students began to be heavily involved in activism, and more protests started happening. And this was inspired by the civil rights movement that had taken place previously. The free speech movement began in 1964. This movement took place at UC Berkeley and lasted for a year. The free speech movement essentially was a series of protests done by students in reaction of the ban put on campus political activities. Students demanded the right to have academic freedom and the right to free speech. Students were wanting to be able to openly criticize segregation, which is in correspondence with the civil rights movement, as well as wanting to speak openly about criticizing the Vietnam War. September 29th, 1964. Dear Diary, I want to wake up one morning and finally be able to say that I have the freedom of being able to speak on what I believe. I want to be able to experience in-depth political conversations with my fellow classmates. I want to be able to be the outspoken person that I am without facing the unnecessary consequences. The civil rights movement is at full swing at the moment. The United States has been becoming involved in the Vietnam War, and I want to express my concerns over these topics. Here at UC Berkeley, we're all going to start fighting for freedom of speech. After what has been going on in the civil rights movement, with all the segregation, racial violence, and discrimination towards the people of color, it's time that we put our foot down and say that enough is enough. I am unsure as to what the steps will be to this. I have a feeling something is about to happen, and soon. I feel as if it is a violation of our constitutional right to not be able to voice our thoughts and opinions politically on what we want to say and speak and what's on our minds. Honestly, I feel as if being censored in all of these rules and regulations feels entirely restrictive and is taking away from my education. October 2nd, 1964. Dear Diary, yesterday at school I saw that a student that had previously graduated had been arrested. His name was Jack Weinberg. I noticed that he was occupying a table for CORE, which stands as the Committee of Racial Equality. What he was doing was very much a political activity on campus, which was a very bold move on his end. Then I saw one of the campus police cars pull up to him. I was tuning into what was going on, and then all of a sudden I saw security guards rapidly storming out of their car and dragging him into the squad car. I was very taken aback about this. I saw some other students that have witnessed the situation just as outraged as I was. I witnessed them beginning to form a crowd around the squad car, and even some jumped to the hood of the vehicle. And students one by one preached to the rest of us of how we need to take action and seize the day. This went on for about 32 hours. Just for some additional background information, in this protest, students were swarming in from all angles, like towards the car, after the arrest of Jack, and the group began to grow larger and larger. And the total students that participated in this protest, or this sit-in if you will, ended up being about 2,500 students, and this protest was completely spontaneous, so it was not planned at all. But this protest was essentially what kick-started it all, and birthed what we call the free speech movement. December 1st, 1964. Dear Diary, it is a few months later from the first initial protest of the free speech movement here at UC Berkeley. Today, hundreds of us decided to partake in yet another protest. This time we decided to do it at Sproul Hall. We all decided to have a little fun with this and essentially turned this one into a mini festival. We set up movies on the walls and we brought in some folk singers to sing on the stairways. This one didn't last as long as last time. We only did this for about 15 hours, but I'm still just as exhausted. December 2nd, 1964. Dear Diary, I woke up this morning with the news that the faculty on our campus finally agreed with our demands. After the long journey of sit-ins, demonstrations, and protests, I'm ecstatic to see that we all made something happen and we're actually going to be seeing some change for once. It has finally come to an end of the fall semester, and the university finally caved in and gave us what we wanted. I'm pretty happy to say the least.